Hi, my name is Rayleigh Sawyer, and I'm here talking about the true cost of living in America, which is pretty much what's on everybody's minds right now. Is America. That's all I've been hearing everybody talk about this whole entire year. So, I'm going to give you some basic details that I found online and a little bit outside it as well. So I did some research, and it's pretty alarming how just from 1970 to 2022, a dramatic change in the economy has separated people from their own lives. People having to live alone because they can't afford to live with other people. People having to stay with their parents until their late 30s because they cannot afford the cost of living in America. But hey, everyone says this is the American dream, right? So apparently, the cost of living back in 1970, 1960 as well, was a little over $100,000. Okay, even some back then say it wasn't even that; it was lower. But now in 2022 and up, it is over $500,000 just to afford a house down here. $500,000. And with these prices jumping to sky high, so does inflation because people can't afford groceries now because of this, and people can't afford to live because if they buy a house, they won't have food. If they buy food, they can't have a house. People can't have the dream of both worlds because it's too much. I read another article that told me about how apparently more people this year work because they have to. It has doubled and quadrupled in the last 5 to 10 years of how many people have started working. 1970 and 1960, we didn't have to worry about that. It was an average rate, but now it's sky high, and it's only getting worse by the minute. So, another thing that I read apparently, is that, as I said before, people have to live alone because apparently they can't afford to live together, as I stated before. And honestly, this is so sad that even my aunt was telling me how much I'm going to have to be able to make during this time. Not only did pay rates go up during this process, but everything else went up with it in the cost of American living. I mean, people nowadays, they have to live on the streets because they can't even afford to get a decent apartment, because even apartment rates now are in the 3,000s for rent, and you won't, even for a 1 bedroom apartment alone, it's $1,500. And that's why a lot of people are living alone, because a lot of mid-age people live in apartments and this is all they can afford. Sure, some people take up roommates, but I mean, you'll still need a 2 bedroom, and at the end of the day, it's still going to be at least $3,000 and up just to be able to afford the both of you guys. Now, this is an equivalent to a speech I did earlier on the egg prices, which intertwines with this speech on food and living in America and the cost of living in it. Not just for houses, like $500,000 for houses, you need at least $2,000 a month just to afford groceries now in some states. New York, California, Florida, Texas, everywhere of the states that have the highest populations and the most growing rates of all. It's just been crazy out here recently. And like I said, it's only going to get worse from here on out. And we don't know what's going to happen until someone speaks up about this. And to get an outside source on the opinion, I not only asked my grandpa on this, but his sister as well, who is my great aunt, who lived back then during that time. She told me that cookies cost a penny. 1 penny. You could find that on the sidewalk nowadays, and that would be worthless. But back then, that's how it was. And you could get an apartment back then for as low as $400 for rent. $400. That's all you had to pay back then just to afford living. And she's a witness of this because she grew up in this time. She grew up in this very house, which her mother had completely paid off because she didn't have to work to the bone to afford it. Sure, she had to work hard. I'm not saying that. But she didn't have to work as hard as we do nowadays. And even though pay rates have tried to equal the amount of cost of living, it still has not. Even in North Carolina, one of the lesser population states, you're still not going to find a house that's cheaper than $250,000 around here. And the pay down here is not even $12 minimum, really. But that's America. And I hope this speech really opens the minds and hearts of all people around that it's time for a change. It's time to bring inflation down. It's time to bring house prices down. It's time to make pay rates go up so that families can go up. Because with this, more Americans are splitting apart because of that one single thing, money. That's all it is, really, that comes down to the bottom of the American dream. Money. If you don't have the money, then really the American dream will just be a dream. Thank you so much for watching my speech. My name is Rayleigh Sawyer, and I hope you all have a good evening.